Let's go.
Now here's a blast from the past. I wonder how many people watching this video will have never seen the port map before. A fairly popular map in its time, but supposedly removed because the changeover to destructible objects, the changeover that allowed you to actually shoot through them, apparently completely unbalanced the map. Not many people bought that excuse, and a lot of folks were sad to see it go. And I liked the map well enough as it was. But if you look up at the top left corner there and check out the frames per second that I'm getting here, it's clear that my setup rather struggled to deal with this. Well, in spite of the poor performance I'm getting from this map, it does have one very, very strong benefit for the T29 here. You will note that the map is split in half by an expanse of grassy hills, and the gradual curvature of the hill on the top left corner here is such that it's a perfect place for the T29 to set up on a reverse slope, so not only am I able to remain hull down, but the frontal armour, if it does pop up, will be at a exaggerated angle, and my cupola will be much, much harder to hit. And as it is a wide and gradual slope, rather than just a solid wall or a piece of rubble that I can pop my head over, I've got a lot more room to manoeuvre, a lot more room to move, and if the enemy starts pushing the attack, I can simply reverse and remain hull down for quite a while. The enemy team, attacking from the north, starts in the northeast corner, and generally takes a while to get to this side of the map, and any tanks trying to work their way through the centre and eastern side across the rail lines have to make their way through a rather winding passage of train cars and bridge supports. So this position gives me a lot of scope to act, to put shots into enemies as they're trying to make their way through that labyrinthine maze of train cars. And all I really have to do is keep an eye on where the threats are coming from, keep my turret pointed at the danger. So I have to make use of the terrain irregularities, the buildings on the left of me, the solid bridge supports on the right, to cut down on the directions of the fields of fire coming in at me, so I can always have my turret pointed at the danger. And that was an unfortunate bit of team damage there. This is what life is like with the Sea Server's horrible performance. If I hold the left mouse button down during the reload cycle and release it just that little bit too close to when it's fully reloaded, then the server considers it as a actual attack. It is so goddamn frustrating, and it still happens. Now, I haven't been even remotely aggressive here, certainly not like the Centurion that drove out and got himself killed, so I've been being cautious, conserving my hit points, and just looking for targets of opportunity, which is practically a necessity for a tank with a DPM as low as the T29. The damage builds up gradually through sustained action. A shot here, a shot there, when the targets present themselves. It's all about setting up for a grind-out war of attrition, taking positions where you can force a long game, to make the engagements drag out long enough for you to actually mount that damage. And of course the key to that is survivability. You have to live long enough to do the damage. Now, I got lucky with that artillery shot. It only splashed me through the tracks, did sweet bugger all damage, and took out my radio operator, so I have to rely on 8-track. And all I've got in this thing is a couple of old Kenny Rogers albums. But, counting my blessings that I've still got most of my hit points, it's definitely time to reposition into the welcoming cover of the bridge overhead, which has opened up a whole host of new targets for me to shoot at. As all my best armour is conveniently located at the top of my tank, and the worst of the ACs is at the top, this shootout definitely favours me over him, and thanks to the grassy ridge to the right of me, I am completely protected from all the scary tanks in the centre. Even better, from this low position, I am completely free to shoot at enemy tanks underneath the train cars, but the enemies on the rail line itself, being in that position elevated, they simply don't have the angle to fire under the train cars. So I'm completely free to fire at the Panther, and he has no chance of returning fire at me. He simply cannot see me. So whenever the AMX AC-48 backs off and is no longer paying attention to me, I can just pop my head over the ridge, look under the train car, try and feather out a shot at the Panther between the train's wheels, and just plug a shot into his lower hull, his lower glacis, all that glorious, glorious soft armour. And due to the support of the IS-6 there, Acting as a deterrent factor, that panther does not want to poke out to get shot by him. So this panther is effectively trapped with no way to respond. He's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. And while his circumstances are making him gun-shy, I am free to take damage off him at my leisure. And it's this factor, this physical terrain setup, that has delivered me that glorious arm's-length engagement that I desperately crave in this vehicle. The fight is close enough that the gross inaccuracy of my gun is not a real pressing factor, and yet it is long enough ranged that the enemy can't simply swarm me. Certainly not now that their numbers are thinned and their line is broken up. It could have been a very different story if they'd just pressed the attack when the Centurion was killed, swarm around the corner and just sweep us away. They had artillery support, they had more vehicles in the centre to back them up, and I would not have been able to turn to engage the targets well enough. I would have been bleeding hit points, just absolutely hemorrhaging them. Likewise, the Su-122-44 would have been incredibly vulnerable in that situation, by which time the sheer weight of numbers would have been telling enough to deal with the IS-6. So instead it's their IS-6 that dies as our team sweeps into a better surrounding position. With the weight of numbers firmly in our favour, and everything pretty much in our hand, I now have the opportunity to go offensive with this defensive tank. If you have come to this video after having watched the Central Hub video, the on-the-line American Heavies one, you'll know that I spent most of my time sort of rubbishing this tank, and I guess this is a good opportunity in this replay for me to sort of go over that a little bit more, offer a counterpoint, as it were, because although my criticisms were valid, and I firmly believe them, they were made more as a counterpoint to the glowing praise that this tank receives that it doesn't quite deserve. But that isn't the entire story about the T29. Simply put, yes, this tank can be frustrating in certain regards, and yes, the playstyle does have certain limitations, but the T29 is a good, solid performer. I found the grind actually quite enjoyable to play through, and that turret armor and gun depression really does offer a lot of opportunities that the IS and the Tiger lack. Once you get the hang of identifying at the start of the match locations where this vehicle can be put to work most effectively, and where it's not going to get simply swamped by enemies, your enjoyment will improve greatly. Playing smart so you can slug it out with vast numbers of enemies at arm's length, as noted already, unquestionably does make you feel like a complete badass. The gun will troll you, but it's got great penetration for the tier, and a decent punch, so it works out great when it remembers to work. And in a sense, the way that this tank benefits from fighting ridgelines and weird locations like that could be a good bridging point for traditional heavy tank players to start branching out into medium gameplay. This tank has a lot to offer when you remember not to overhype it. So that's all it takes to ace this tank, just making sure that the game lasts long enough that you can put some damage out, and as you can see, it soon adds up. This tank needs a long fight to excel, but it gives you the tools to do it. As I've said before, it's a one-trick pony, but it's a hell of a trick, and it's damn good at it. So make it count.